Ready.
Hey guys, welcome to Fort Davis. My name is Coach Shelton, and I have a treat for you. My World Geography class this year is going to be doing a documentary over all of Fort Davis. Throughout the next week, we're going to be going around Fort Davis and showing you some of the most historical parts of this young and vibrant town. So I'm up here at Skyline today, and Skyline is one of the most beautiful sights in all of Fort Davis. If you can see out in this view right now, you can see all of Fort Davis in the background. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. So stay with us, and we're going to have a great time. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Amber Granato, and I'll be interviewing Wanda at the Davis Mountain State Park about the geographic history. So let's go. Hi, I'm Amber Granato, and I'm here with Tara and Wanda. And may y'all please state your position and what y'all do here?
My name is Wanda Oshevsky, and I'm the park superintendent.
I'm Tara Pulaski, and I am the park interpreter and volunteer coordinator.
Okay. Well, I have a few questions for y'all. When was the state park established?
I guess I'll talk a little bit and then I'll let Tara give more details. I would say it began in about 1933 because that was when the Civilian Conservation Corps came and was going to develop a park in this area, and that's the time that we have development of a lot of the buildings in the park, like the Indian Lodge and like the famous overlook that's up on Skyline Drive. So that's a very interesting history, and there's even pictures behind us there of some of the people that were part of the CCC. So Tara, what would you add?
So this area is the coolest part in Texas, right? So in the summer, not just cool, but it's very cool too weather-wise. So people would come out here in the summer from Lake Houston, and they wanted a place where they could come and actually be able to take their families to a hotel. And so that's why they really pushed to make this a state park, for the public to come and enjoy this cool summers.
And part of the purpose of it was for there to be a scenic drive and for there to be parklands associated with it that people could enjoy. And so we see all these years later that's still happening, which is part of our job to make sure that it can.
Who built the state park?
The Civilian Conservation Corps.
How many acres does the park cover?
2,709.
What's the history of the park?
Well, so it was built in between 1933 and 1935, and it opened with a big opening day barbecue on July 4th, 1935. And that was when the lodge was open, and it was just this side of the park. So on this side of 118, Highway 118, this is where the campground is, Skyline Drive, Indian Lodge. And then we purchased the other side of the park, the primitive area, which is actually bigger than this side.
53% is over there.
Yep, and that was in 1989, and then we opened it in about 1991, and since then we have made more trails. We have about 20 miles of trails in the park, and there's equestrian trails, there's foot trails, mountain biking trails. It's just about a little something for everybody, I think. Backpacking.
If you want to hike, more than 4 miles away from your car and camp out at the top of a mountain without any restrooms and without facilities and without people around you can do that. Or you can bring an RV and have a sewer line and have cable TV. Or you can stay in a really nice historic hotel room. You can do all of that stuff here and a bunch of stuff in between too that we skipped.
And how many visitors do you get yearly?
It is, as of fiscal year 2016, because the way the state counts is starting September 1st to October 31st, we had about 93,000 last year. That's a lot, huh?
Yes. Okay, well, that's all we have. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Justin Dutchover, and I'm here at Dirks Anderson Elementary. I'm going to be talking to a couple of teachers here that were former students, and we're going to talk about the history of this wonderful Dirks Anderson school. Let's go. Hello, my name is Joseph Dutchover, and I'm here at the elementary introducing two elementary teachers that I've known for quite a while. And can y'all state y'all's positions and how long y'all been here?
I am Mrs. Merrill, and this is my 21st year here.
I'm Adele Coffey, and this is my 20th year here.
Thank you. So, when was the elementary built?
The elementary was built in 1924. The land was acquired in 23, and it's named Dirks Anderson, and Miss Dirks was the first teacher here, and they named the school after her.
Okay. Has there ever been a dress code for the students here?
Yes, and that we consider a dress code still. We ask that their clothes are clean. They are not supposed to have holey jeans, and we ask that they keep their hair above their collar and certainly out of their eyes. That's a big part of our dress code now. There once was a point where we asked kids to tuck shirt tails in, and that was difficult to enforce. There are kids who are built in a way that they're more comfortable with shirt tails out, and that was a tough one for us. So that one's kind of fallen by the wayside.
What grades are serviced here, and when did it change?
We have pre-K through 5th grade here. Just recently, in 2013, they have moved the 6th grade from our campus to the other campus, and I think there were several reasons for doing that. I believe that certainly there was possibly an athletic reason. For so many years, our numbers were strong enough at the junior high that they didn't need 6th grade to participate, but probably for various reasons, those numbers have come down a little bit, and 6th grade is now sometimes invited to participate. Also, it cleared up some space on our campus for us to have some more room, and I believe they had adequate junior high teachers, an adequate number of junior high teachers at that campus to support the 6th graders a little bit better.
What are some ways that the elementary has evolved over the years you have been here?
I think there's definitely a stronger focus on academics. We used to spend time making paper chains at Christmas, and we spent a lot of class time doing that. We used to go to, the pep rallies used to be at lunchtime, and we used to eat early and pack up every kid and go to every pep rally. And now we're just not able to do that because we understand the stronger focus in the classroom is critical for our kids so that we can prepare them for junior high and high school.
Our time as far as the day has been extended some. Kids go to school a little bit longer than they did. We did more field trips, more probably fun things than we were able to do now.
This question's for both of you. Tell me a little bit about your time here as well as your connection to the school.
Well, I've been here 20 years and I've done a little bit of everything. I was hired as a special ed aide. I've also taught PE 2 years. I'm now the librarian and the food director. We started serving breakfast about 9 years ago, so I've been doing that. I was born and raised in Marfa, but my husband's family was from here. In fact, my mother-in-law went through, and my grandfather-in-law, I guess, went through school here, Fort Davis. We homeschooled our kids for a long time, and when we got ready to put them in school, I looked at all the schools in the area, and Fort Davis really had the best school at the time, so that's why we picked to be here. And I've worked with some awesome people. I've done a little bit of everything, and have really appreciated and loved my time here.
I've been here 21 years. Mr. Merrill and I met out at Prude Ranch summer camp. I was a camper out at Prude Ranch, and then was a counselor, and at that point Steve and I met each other and dated on and off. And when he moved here, he knew my love for the mountains and the community of Fort Davis. So he called me and said, "You'll never believe where Curtis Pittman and I are going." And that kind of reestablished our connection. And several years later, we were married and settled out here and have raised our kids here and really love the community and are believers in the school system. And our kids have had a good experience here, and we have appreciated being here. I've worked with some wonderful people and have made some really good friends here in the community, and that's a big part of Fort Davis?
Fort Davis School is like a community, and one thing that impressed me when we looked at the other schools, and it was this way when I was in high school growing up and we played Fort Davis some, that there was such an outpouring of fans. People that didn't even have kids in school went to football games. It was packed. The community really supports our school. That makes Fort Davis a great place to have your kids.
And a plug for the students, we teach nice kids. I mean, we teach kids that show respect and that appreciate a good education, and we teach kids that work very hard, and that's appreciated. I don't think you get that everywhere, and you don't see that even when you travel so much, even in the area. Some of the kids are very nice and polite, and you come across kids that you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm glad we teach where we teach, and we appreciate the kids that we come across, and the teenagers and the young people, and it's a part of the community.
It is.
Well, that's all the questions I have for y'all, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
So can you state your name and when did you attend school here?
Okay, my name is Diana Dechover Olivas. I was born in Alpine, Texas, and I've lived here all my life. I started here at Dirks Anderson Elementary, and I graduated in 1976, and I've been working for the district. This is my 24th year, and I love it. And
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. When did the school become segregated?
I'm not exactly sure what date it was, but I remember my brothers, they went through it, and the Hispanics weren't allowed to mingle with the whites, and they cry to this day. Their tears roll down their eyes when they talk about it, but it has changed a great deal now, and it's I got something else.
Okay. You ready?
I remember when I was in the elementary, if we brought a burrito to school for our lunch, we would eat it out of our sacks because we would get made fun of from the whites. And but later on, they wanted to trade their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for our bean burritos. And as I went through my elementary years, it got better. And now, I think we're all brothers and sisters.
Well, that's good to know. And thank you for your time.
Welcome to the Hotel Olympia. My name is Jeremy Morales. I will be interviewing a gentleman today about the history and geography of the Hotel Olympia. So come on, let's go. Today we're in the Olympia's hotel lobby with Steve Merrill today. He will be telling us about himself and a little bit of his time spent here in the hotel.
My name is Steve Merrill. I've worked here at the hotel for almost 5 years now, and I'm the front desk supervisor for the hotel. I recently retired from the school district, and so this is my second profession, as you would say. And as we sit here in the lobby of the main hotel building, the hotel is over 100 years old, and so it lends itself to that with the decor and the rooms are very historic.
When was it established?
The original Hotel Olympia was built in 1884. It was across from the fort. And when the fort was deactivated in the 1890s, the hotel closed and was rebuilt and established here in 1912.
And when it was established, what part of the building was established?
The main building that we're in right now is part of the original hotel. There have been some additions, the veranda that goes to the east of us. But we've also added a suites building in 1917. An additional building was built just behind the main historic building. and it has little apartments, kitchens, and it was used to house people would come to Fort Davis for their consumption, what we call tuberculosis, and they would come for the dry climate, and so they would come and stay longer periods of time. That building was built in 1917, and then we have 8 rooms across the street in our Olympia West building, which was built in 1923.
Can you tell me a little bit about the bistro?
We do have a restaurant, was originally called Olympia Dining Room. It was remodeled about 7 years ago and reestablished as the Blue Mountain Bistro. It is one of the finest restaurants in the area, with reviews from Texas Monthly and other state magazines that give it a very high rating.
Okay, thank you for your cooperation today, sir.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Today I'm here with the great-granddaughter who started this fine hotel. She's going to tell us here about herself. So can you please say your name and...
I'm Beth Francel, and I live about 2 blocks from here. And my great-grandfather was the manager of the Hotel Olympia. You know, the courthouse was built in 1911, and so was the jail. And very soon after, the bank and the library and this hotel were built. And the money came from a group of people, a group of men. But from the time this was built until 1936, my great-grandfather, Walter Miller, was the manager of the hotel. He'd been a rancher, he'd been a manager of a store, but Kesey, Walter Miller, and Mr. Espy, a lot of people were in this consortium of funders for the square and the businesses around here. He died in 1936, and it was during a flood period, and he had to be brought on the train, I guess from the place where he was embalmed, to Marfa, and then they had to put him on his body in the casket, I guess, on a cart and cover the road with hay so they wouldn't sink in the, of course all the roads were, dirt mostly back then. And his wife, Lena, was an Espy in the Espy family. And her family, the rest of the Espys, had already been out here. And Walter and Lena came with my grandfather, whose name was Espy, first name was Espy, in a covered wagon, and he was 2 years old. And they said that Lena was not a great cook, and she was pretty stingy with money. So when Lana Duncan and her husband Joe bought the hotel, they wanted to do a cookbook of historic recipes and some of Lena's recipes when there was a restaurant here and she was the manager of the restaurant. And everybody said, oh, Lena was a terrible cook. You wouldn't want any of her recipes. So right now, my mother's last name was Miller, and we live in the house that my grandparents bought in 1930, and that was the beginning of the Depression. And it's a 2-story house, and they kept boarders upstairs, and I think between all the boarders there was a payment of about $500 a month, and that kept them going through the Depression. And my grandmother was a great cook, so I have a lot of her recipes. But right now we're redoing the landscape. There were some shrubs along here, and the current owner wanted more color and things to attract butterflies, and so we're putting in some more flowering plants along here, and that's why I'm involved. And it's kind of neat to be involved in a business that my great-grandfather was involved in.
And when it was first established, did y'all establish the whole hotel already, or what part was first put in?
This wraparound porch with the glass, that's an addition in recent years. I'm not sure exactly when. But there was, in addition to a drugstore, in addition to a restaurant here, there was a drugstore, a real pharmacy in this hotel. It was kind of a gathering place for the community. And They have since bought what is called the Annex back there. That was another business, and the Javelinas and Hollyhocks across the street, that's another business that was acquired in more recent years, probably in the last 30 years, I guess. That's part of this Olympia Hotel. And at one time, the people that worked at the solar observatory, you know, the big dish out there off of Sproul Road, they lived here. I think even some of the astronomers with McDonald Observatory lived here before they built the residences up on the hill. So there's a lot of history in this building, and I'm sure I'm not aware of all of it. There's a book about the building of McDonald Observatory called Big and Bright, and my great-grandfather, Walter Miller, was very instrumental in getting the mountain donated to the University of Texas to be McDonald Observatory. And the story of how he did that is in that book, Big and Bright. I'm sure that's in your library, either here or in the real Jeff Davis County Library.
And the bistro, when did it start?
That's the current owner, and I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, he changed the location of the restaurant and put in the Blue Mountain Bistro. And did a lot of really nice remodeling and updating. And as you can see, they're still doing it, putting a new roof on, and lots of different projects going on around here to continue to upgrade the old building. Any old building needs constant work. I know, because we live in a house that was built in 1880, and there's always something that needs maintenance.
My name is Becky Caswell. We're here at the McDonald Observatory today to interview Mark Wetzel. Mr. Wetzel has worked here for many years and is going to be giving us some insight on the history and geography of the observatory. So let's go. So here's Mark Wetzel, and we're going to be asking him a few questions today. So Mr. Wetzel.
Yes.
How high above sea level is the McDonald Observatory?
A long way. Did you want to know how far? Okay, yes, 6,791 feet above the ocean.
That's quite impressive.
And do you remember how many feet are in a mile?
I do not.
5,280. That means that we're even more than a mile above the ocean.
Well, I would say that's very high up.
It is. It is.
When was it established, and how long did it take?
Well, this was quite a project. It involved a lot of even local families in Fort Davis. The telescope behind me was the very first telescope built, and that was in 1939. So we just celebrated a couple of years ago our 75th birthday. We actually had a birthday cake and we sang happy birthday. It's totally geeky, to the telescope.
I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, so it was a big project, and this telescope was built, this building was built by a lot of contractors, people whose job it is to build big buildings. But locally, like I was saying, there are a lot of families in Fort Davis who are still with us today that have had ancestors that worked on the telescope project during the 20s and the 30s. Kind of neat. So it definitely belongs to Fort Davis, that's for sure.
That's very awesome. So who decided to build it?
Well, it was sort of this desire that this older fellow, he was an older fellow when he did this. He was actually a banker, and he lived in East Texas in this little town called Paris, Texas. So he gets very wealthy from all his banking knowledge, and when he passes away, he gives most of it to the University of Texas and says to them, here is $1 million. So this guy had $1 million. That is for 1939, that is a huge amount of money. Today, that would be billions of dollars, probably. I'm actually not sure how much it would be worth, but a lot. So he gives all this money, and his family, by the way, and this may in fact be why he had $1 million to begin with. He was never married and he didn't have any kids. And so he had a lot of money and he gave it specifically for one purpose. He said, here UT have all $1 million to build and equip an astronomical observatory. So suddenly UT has $1 million, and wow, we can build a giant telescope and we can start teaching astronomy at the university and having astronomers actually doing research at the university. Wow. And it would be somewhere in Texas. Wow, even better. So here we have it. That's what this building is, the very first one that was built. So, okay, that's the spark notes on it, okay?
So I like that fun fact.
Yeah.
How many telescopes do you have, and which is your biggest?
Well, let me think. We have like 20 telescopes.
Oh.
Okay, but not all of them are like big enough to put in like these huge domes. So when you come to McDonald Observatory, the ones that you see are obviously the big domes. Well, that's just 3. And there's tons more smaller domes around. Plus, if you add the telescopes at the visitor center, it's like 40 or 50 telescopes out here. There's a bunch. The biggest is the Hobby Eberly telescope, which we will go to quickly so we can get some video footage and you'll be able to include it and show, okay? And do that. So yeah, it's called the Hobby Eberly telescope. It's, well, the diameter of this telescope is 2.1 meters. So 2 meters in diameter. The largest telescope here at the observatory is 10 meters by 11 meters. So the mirror is huge. It's one of the largest in the world. It's in the top 5, but all the 5 largest telescopes are basically near the same size. They're not really different, but they're about the size of the one we have here, called the Hobby Eberly telescope.
That is very impressive. How many mirrors are on the Hobby telescope?
Oh, the one we were just talking about.
Yes.
The Hobby Eberly telescope. That's the largest one here, and it's the reason why I said 10 by 11 meters. So, okay, the reason it doesn't just have one diameter is because it's not a circle. The mirrors themselves, when they're all together that are used to collect light, when you look at them, they make a hexagon shape. So if you measure the length from corner to corner of the hexagon, that's 11 meters. But if you measure the diameter from flat side to flat side of the hex, that's 10. So we say it's 10 by 11 meter hexagon. Big, huge, it's giant, it's gigantic. And astronomers are using it from UT and around the world to answer the the most cutting edge questions of our time. I mean, we're alive now. The most amazing things we can think to ask about the whole universe, us smart human beings, we're answering using that giant telescope. And this one here that we tried to see here at the observatory.
I think it's a very great resource for Fort Davis.
I think so too, and it's, you know, it's on top of all of that coolness, we are also really, really a public observatory. And that you don't find around a lot, because most of the time if you visit an observatory, they're like, hi, well, you know, we have to get started now, so we have to go. But no, here at the observatory, we've got tours, we have these viewing programs, we have education programs, we do teacher training. It's really tremendous. So it's awesome.
So, are there any new plans for a new telescope?
Why, yes, as a matter of fact. But not here.
Oh.
So we are involved in a project that a lot of universities and countries of the world are involved in. We are all trying to build a telescope that's so big that no single individual entity or country could possibly pay for it. And it's so big. No. How big is it?
Oh, how big is it?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, it's so big that the HET that we were just talking about, the Hobby Eberly telescope,
yes.
Remember I said it was 10 meters by 11 meters?
Yes.
So like 11 meters, all right, so like for those of you watching on camera, from where we're standing here to right about where you see the end of the dark road behind us, where that little white car is, like maybe but a little closer in, that's about 11 meters between here and there. So that's the size of the mirror at the HET. The new telescope is going to have 7 mirrors that size.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot.
That is a lot and huge,
Yeah.
right? That's called the Giant Magellan. They are so creative about these names. The Giant Magellan Telescope.
That is very cool.
And it's going to be in Chile.
Chile?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very expensive project. And the University of Texas is involved in paying for some of it. And so, as a result, the astronomers at the University of Texas, those that use this observatory too, will have access to Chile.
I think that's awesome that all the countries are coming together
Yeah.
to kind of build a new one.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Isn't that neat?
That
It's leveraging everybody's interests. Because, like for example, you and I could be astronomers, and I'm from the United States, and you could be from Italy. Okay, so that's that. So anyway.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Cordell Posh. Today I'm at the Jeff Davis County Courthouse, and today I'll be interviewing Mary Ann Luedeke over the history of the courthouse. So let's go. Hi, I'm Cordell Posh. I'm at the Jeff Davis County Courthouse with Mary Ann Luedeke. If you could, what do you do here at the courthouse?
Good morning, Cordell, and thank y'all for having me. I'm Justice of the Peace in Jeff Davis County, elected just 3 short years ago. So, welcome everyone.
If it's all right with you, I'd like to ask you a few questions over the history of the courthouse.
Yes, sir, please.
When was the courthouse built?
This courthouse was built starting in 1910. The original courthouse was built in 1880, and it served until 1911 when it was torn down and everybody moved into this courthouse.
When was the construction of this courthouse completed?
This was completed in 1911. I don't know the exact months. I know it was started in 1910 and completed in 1911. And everybody moved into it in 1911.
Why was this courthouse built?
This courthouse was built because the original courthouse not only was just a maintenance nightmare, but it resulted in county seat wars were not uncommon in early Texas, and this courthouse was built as a result of a county seat war. According to state law, the state is allowed or is obligated with building a convenient building for holding county courts. And a county seat war was the original reason for building this courthouse. Jeff Davis County was originally Presidio County. And once the Southern Pacific Railroad was completed, which bypassed what is now Jeff Davis County, Jeff Davis County residents called for their own courthouse since Presidio County wanted to house the county seat. Following that election, the original courthouse was built, and once it was evacuated and torn down, then this courthouse was built in its place.
Okay. What is the significance of this courthouse here?
The courthouse houses state's officials, state's elected officials, and houses those official records. So anything that happens, births, deaths, any civic event happens here. And those records are kept and housed in this courthouse.
How long was the previous courthouse here?
Previous courthouse was built in 1880 and stood until 1911 when this courthouse was completed. It had the original jail in the basement, and that jail was dubbed the Bat Cave because bats often came and went through the windows that were not covered. So it was dubbed the Bat Cave. That courthouse was originally built on top of the Bat Cave jail, and everything was pushed into it when this courthouse was finished.
So this was just an immediate replacement?
This was once the county seat war was completed and Jeff Davis County got its own courthouse, then that courthouse stood then until this was completed in 1911.
Would you consider this courthouse a landmark?
Most definitely. A few significant dates. In 2000, this was entered as a recorded Texas historic landmark. In 2002, it was entered as a National Register of Historic Places, and in 2003, the courtyard itself was entered as a state antiquities landmark. Besides being the highest courthouse in the state of Texas, with the elevation of 5,050 feet, there's a number of registered landmarks in the state of Texas. This one is the highest elevation for the courthouse, for a courthouse.
Yeah. Well, with it being a landmark, is it a tourist attraction?
Most definitely a tourist attraction. And it's often in small towns, people will say, well, you go by the courthouse and turn right or turn left. So it's mentioned daily as a point of significance. And people often come to tour the courthouse itself.
Well, thank you for answering the questions I had, and thank you for allowing me your time.
Yes, sir. And I have something I'd like for y'all to take and go forward with from here, if you would. Somewhere on the courthouse or the courthouse grounds, there is a benchmark which establishes this as our official courthouse. I'd like for y'all to see if you can find that point of reference to go forward. It will give you the longitude, the latitude, everything that's significant for this courthouse is included on that benchmark.
Okay.
Your task from here is to find that benchmark and tell me what it says.
Okay, we will try and find it.
Good deal.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, my name is Mark Bennett. Today we are here at the historical Prude Ranch. I'm going to be interviewing a staff member about the geography of this place. All right, come on, let's go. Hello guys, today we're here at Prude Ranch in the office with the group's coordinator, Michael Simpson. Today I'm going to be interviewing him. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, as you said, I'm Michael Simpson. I'm the group's coordinator. I've been here at Prude Ranch full-time for a little over a year, but I've worked here ever since I was in college, which was a long time ago. 2004 is when I started out here for the first time, so
okay.
That's a little bit about me. So.
All right, I guess we can just get into the first question. How long has Prude Ranch been Prude Ranch?
Prude Ranch was established in 1896, 1897. So, I mean, that's 120 years, a little bit more than that.
Okay. Second question, what can you tell me about the landscape of the ranch as far as the terrain?
Oh, well, we're a high desert. We're on the edge of the Chihuahuan Desert, and lots of mountains, lots of up and down. The Olympia Creek runs right through the middle of the property, and lots of cactus and cat claw. So.
Has Prude Ranch always been a tourist attraction?
No. Up until about the mid-20s, it was just a cattle ranch like everywhere else out here pretty much. But then in the 20s, people from San Antonio and El Paso and Midland, Odessa realized that up here in the mountains, you know, it's a little cooler in the summertime, and they started kind of migrating this way in the summertime for vacation. And Grandmother Prude decided, well, maybe we could take in some guests. So they started taking guests in at the big house right across in the mid-20s, and kind of treated it as a bed and breakfast. And then eventually they were still ranching and doing that, but kind of eventually morphed into what we are today. And today we just run horses. We have a herd of 57 horses and do trail rides with out-of-town guests, and have a summer camp for 8 weeks out of the summer. So
cool. Are there any other fun facts you can tell us about the ranch?
Fun facts about the ranch. Well,
you can rent cabins.
Yeah, you can rent cabins. You can come take a horseback ride, like I said. If you have a group of people that want to come out, we've got a challenge course with high elements and low elements. And we have all sorts of educational activities that people, I guess, around town, you know, living in Fort Davis, you probably don't do the tourist stuff. Right. So, you know, it's kind of a tourist destination, but it's just a little bit about us. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time,
Of
sir.
course, thank you guys.
Yep.
So.
Oh, hello there. My name's Troy Hernandez, and I'm at the Commanding Officer's House at the Fort Davis National Historic Site, where I will be interviewing a gentleman today about the historical events that came here. So let's go. Hi there again. I'm here in the Fort Davis National Historic Site barracks, where I'm with Ranger John Heiner, and I will let him let you know about this place.
Well, hello everyone, I'm Park Ranger John Heiner. I've been here at the fort for about 22 years, and I've actually worked for the National Park Service at Big Bend and Grand Canyon before that. We're glad all of you could join us today. We're in the enlisted man's barracks here at Fort Davis. Probably about 26 men or so would have lived here in the barracks when it was in operation. You may have heard of the Buffalo Soldiers. Weren't we going to talk about that, Troy?
Yes, sir. Who were the Buffalo Soldiers?
Well, after the Civil War, the Army reorganized, and they allowed black men to join the Army at that point. A lot of these men had been former slaves, or if they lived in the northern United States, had been free men before the Civil War. But anyway, with the Army's reorganization, they established two regiments of cavalrymen and 4 regiments of infantry that were all composed of African American soldiers. And a lot of these soldiers would come to the frontier, like Fort Davis and Fort Stockton. You may have heard of some of those forts, or Fort Concho or Fort McKevitt. And their job was to patrol and campaign along the San Antonio-El Paso Road. You know where the San Antonio-El Paso Road went? Where? San Antonio de El Paso. Okay. That was just a trick question, Troy. But anyway, they would patrol and campaign along that road and to protect the travelers using that road. Now, you might wonder, where did they get the name Buffalo Soldier, right? Well, it's not written down anywhere, but it's kind of assumed and widely accepted that a lot of these black soldiers, their first assignments were amongst the northern Cheyenne Indians in Kansas and Nebraska and what have you. And the Cheyenne weren't used to seeing black men, especially black men in Army uniforms. And they were very curious, and they started to equate the hair between the horns of the buffalo to the hair on the black man's head. Very similar, right? And, we may think that's derogatory or maybe even a little funny, but what did the buffalo mean to the Cheyenne Indians? Was it everything to them? Was it food, clothing, you name it, tools? So it was actually a term of respect more than a derogatory term.
Okay. Well, the Cheyenne Indians, what kind of Indians lived outside the
around Fort Davis? Well, it kind of between Fort Davis and Fort Stockton was the dividing line between the Comanche and the Apache Indians. So Fort Davis had more Apache Indians. You had, they were known as the Warm Springs Apache. You may have heard of Geronimo before. Geronimo was actually a Chiricahua Apache, and his bands lived in Arizona. But some of the more famous Indian chiefs out here would have been like Nana or Mangus Colorados, but probably the most famous one was a man named Victorio. He was a Warm Springs or Mescalero Apache. And soldiers from Fort Davis probably had maybe about 100 what we call interactions, or they're not really battles or fights, but at least skirmishes with the various Apaches that would have been in this area.
Okay. Well, the fort, do you know when it was established?
Sure. When we talk about Fort Davis, a lot of times we talk about it as there were two or maybe even three different forts here. The first fort was first established in 1854 and went up until the beginning of the Civil War, and around there was Confederate contingency, so they were here till the early 1862. Once the Civil War is over, you had these forts reestablished, like Fort Davis, and that was in 1867, and then it went on up until 1891. But these forts were reestablished for the same reason as they were in the beginning, because as you probably know, Troy, in late 1840s they discovered gold in California, right? And with the discovery of gold, all these men, or well, not just men, but families and single persons started moving west, right? Because they were going to go to California and strike it rich, right? Of course, very few of them actually did strike it rich, but as they were pushing across the Southwest, they have more and more interaction with the Comanche and the Apache and the various Indian tribes. So the Indians were pretty much okay with it in the early years, but as more and more people came, there's more and more pressure on both sides, so it leads to more conflict, which the immigrants are calling on the U.S. Army for protection.
Okay. Besides the barracks, what other buildings do you have at the fort, and why?
When the Army came out here, not just the Army, but the United States in general, they're trying to settle the West, right? Not just protect travelers. So in order to do that, you need families, right? That's how you build a town. You build a community based on families. So, you have the barracks where the enlisted men would have lived, like here. I think you've been across the parade ground to the officers' houses, and the officers' houses are more set up for families to live in, right, than just single men. You'd have churches, have libraries. I know you probably spend a lot of time in the library over there at Fort Davis, and that's a good place. So you'd have schools, the Army would actually have schools. And one important thing about schooling in the Army is, as you probably realize through your studies over the years, before the American Civil War, it was basically illegal to teach a black person how to read and write. And so a lot of these men that joined the Army were illiterate, and that was one reason the Army was out here, was to, well, not one of the reasons, but one of the byproducts, you might say, was to educate these men. And they would, in the evenings, a lot of times, they would hold school where these men would learn reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, probably about the same things a kid in the 3rd or 4th grade in our modern society would know. But these men were 20-something years old probably, and they had never been given the opportunity to learn.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir, for...
Okay. Well, I got one more story to tell you, all right? Okay, so we've been talking about men for the most part, right? We're talking about soldiers and officers, and they're all men, right? Now, I don't know if you knew this, but in the late, or in the 1870s or so, the Army would actually go back east, you know, to the Chicago, New York, Boston, wherever, and recruit young ladies to come to the frontier. And, you know, these ladies would probably be, I don't know, 15 into their 20s or so. And what they would recruit them for is to be laundresses. Now, what do you think a laundress might do? What's that term sound like?
Do laundry.
Do the laundry. Very good. They would find young ladies that would come to the frontier to wash the clothes for the soldiers, and for the officers, of course. And you say, well, dang, if I was a young lady, I wouldn't want to go in the middle of West Texas somewhere and wash clothes for a bunch of stinky soldiers. That doesn't sound very, very, very glamorous, does it? But there's a couple of things to keep in mind. The soldiers, you know how much a soldier made a month? An enlisted man, like would have lived in this barracks?
No, sir, I do not.
About $13 a month, okay? And a laundress would come out here, and the post commander would set the pay rate for doing the laundry, and that was generally anywhere between about 50 cents and $2 per man per month. And each laundress was assigned, and only the Army could come up with this, assigned 19 and a half men to do the laundry for her, okay? So let's just round that off to 20, okay? So if a laundress, if you were a young lady who came to the frontier to do laundry, let's say each man had to pay you $1 per month to do their laundry, and you did the laundry for 20 men, how many dollars a month would you be making?
It would be $20.
$20 a month. And how much are you making as a soldier?
13.
13. Okay. So it's and plus you're given 2 meals a day. Being in the Army, these ladies would only be given 1 meal a day, so they'd have to probably cook on their own, and they'd be given use of the post hospital. So that's pretty amazing, huh? They'd make that much more than the soldiers. So, yeah. All right, well, thank you, Troy. I enjoyed visiting with you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello, I'm Daniel Morales. Welcome to Jeff Davis County Library. I'm here to do an interview with a librarian today. Her name is Gwen Grimes. So come on, let's go. Hello, I'm Daniel Morales. I'm here in Jeff Davis County Public Library. I'm here with Ms. Gwen Grimes. We're going to talk about the historical place today. How would you like to introduce yourself, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Gwen Grimes. I am the librarian here in Jeff Davis County, and I'm very proud to be working in this interesting and historic old building.
When was this building established?
It was actually built in 1873 as a store and a saloon.
Were those the only ones that were here?
Well, it was pretty much a store the whole time it's been built, except it also served other functions in the community. At various times it held the post office, it was a bank. It also, for a time, the county housed prisoners down in the basement. And it was also the telephone exchange. So when you made a phone call, your phone call came through this building and then went elsewhere. So, and then it wasn't, let's see, we moved into the library here in 1999. So it's been the library now for 18 years.
And how long did it take to build the library?
Oh gosh, they started building this building, I think it took about 3 years, and over the years they kept adding on to the building, and they also added a lot of buildings out back, and one of the buildings was just used to store dynamite in. So why do you think they had a lot of dynamite around here?
The mountains?
Yeah, building roads and blowing up big rocks so that they could build ranches, so yeah.
Do you know which part of the building was the original one?
Oh, that was at the very front when you first come in the front door. That was the original part, and they kept adding on and adding on. So this is the second part, and then where the Chamber of Commerce is now was the third part. And they stored a lot of feed in here.
Oh.
So the store sold everything that you could need in town. It was like a big Walmart for the day.
And how did you keep track of all the books?
How do I keep track of all the books? On a computer. They all have numbers.
And back then, you would just do the cards?
In the old days, yes, we had a card catalog and they were literally on little index cards.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for your time today, man.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
I'm Cordell Posh, and I'm here to butter your biscuit.